E-scooters. Are they a public nuisance or the next step forward in mobility and personal transport? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Paul and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. I'm your host and we're going to dive in today to some of the topics, some of the key aspects of e-scooters. So just to clarify, we're not talking about those scooters for elderly or injured people where you sit down in a seat and then drive around the town. We're talking about the ones that you see all the young people on, where you stand on it and you push the throttle and away you go. The electric scooters that we see in all the big cities. Okay, right. So let's dive in. As I said, are they a menace or are they the next big thing in urban transport? Wow. So I've been looking at a lot of articles recently and there's mixed opinion. So like I said, they're the thing you stand on with on average 8-inch wheels. Normally they're pneumatic tires, so they're filled with air. They have brakes on them, disc brakes. And in some countries, you're not allowed on the pavement, and in some countries, you're allowed only on the pavement. Different countries and different cities have different rules. So let's look at it in the two aspects. There's two sides of it. So the first side of it, the positive side. I always seem to start with positive side. Okay, let's start with the positive side. So it's a new industry. And it creates more jobs. So that's the first thing. There's one here saying a single mother, she puts the children to bed in the evening for the grandparents to babysit, and she goes off and picks up these scooters. She says it's a bit like a game of Pokemon. She picks these scooters up, charges them overnight. They call it scooter juicing. And I think they get about $6. So this is an American article, $6 per scooter. And then she has to put them back out in the city before 7 a.m. So I guess she picks them up in the evening, sort of 8, 9 o'clock at night, picks them all up and then charges them all up for 3, 4, 5 hours and then puts them all back out into the city. So it's creating a new job for the people that juice them up. Obviously there's maintenance, so I'm guessing somebody has to go around and pick up the broken scooters or just putting them back in a certain place or bringing them back in for whatever reasons. So that's another job. Then you've got the call centers, the apps, and the marketing and all that. So I'd imagine each scooter company employs quite a few people, making quite a few jobs. So that's the first part, jobs. The second part is urban mobility. And so because of COVID or from COVID, e-scooters skyrocketed. The use of e-scooters, the purchase of personal scooters really taken off. And that's because, like they say, the last mile of transport. Many people want to get out of a car, especially in a city. Many people don't want to cycle and be all sweaty. Even if you have an electric bicycle, it's lots of money and battery to be locked up outside in the rain. Many of these scooters you can fold up and take on the bus with you, take it on the train. You can take it in an elevator, take it up to your office. So they are very flexible, and you can carry them a short distance, like up some steps or something like that. So they have a lot of practical use and flexibility. They are very desirable for that part. Especially if it's a couple of miles and you want to get to work. If you walk, then you've got to leave a lot more time. But if you go on a scooter, then obviously you can leave a lot later and you've got more flexibility for other times that you want to pop out and things like that during lunch break or whatever. Also, people are using them for deliveries across the city and things, and other like food or important documents or things like that. So that's another aspect. Right, there was one more I was thinking of. Yeah, so a lot of people want to be eco-friendly. A lot of people, like I say, want to get out of their cars and avoid public transport because of COVID. So avoiding public transport by having this last mile option that they can put up under their desk, you know, take it upstairs and then put it under their desk is really, really desirable. So we were saying the credentials of being maybe a lithium ion battery and being new modern technology. You're less likely to use the car with the CO2. You're less likely to have wear and tear on a vehicle. You're not going to be with people on a bus, public transport, trains, whatever, and worrying about COVID and other issues. So that's the main aspect for it. That's the main reason why so many people are into it. It just comes across as so desirable. You got jobs, you got, well, like I said, you got jobs, you got the eco credentials, and you got the flexibility. So that's the three biggest points there, flexibility. So there have been studies done, even though it's a very new fledgling industry, the studies have shown that it's more percentage. So I think it's about 60% is young males, and sort of 30 years and below. Often you'll also find lots of teenagers on them, sometimes two people on them. So the next question is, where should you use it? How should you use it? And who's it for? Well, most e-scooters and from what I can read so far, government bodies want people with a provisional license. So that means over 18-year-olds. So that's all the young people taken out of the equation altogether. Whether that's to do with responsibility or whether or not it's somebody they can fine or whether somebody's responsible, I don't know. It could be any of those. But our government seems to imply that it should be, and I'll get onto that in a minute, people between the ages, people from the age of 18 with some identification, such as a provisional license. Begs the question, if you've got a license, why would you need a scooter? Anyway, that's another story. Right, okay, so that's the preface for it. And like I said, so there's jobs, and this one woman has got a job. She's making a little bit of money at it. That's a positive thing. Another one here says Honda's now made a three-wheeled scooter. I don't know whether that will be still as respectable and street cred or not. I don't know, but it's supposed to be more safe and sturdy. So there hopefully will be less accidents. So that's another one of the articles. What else we got? So, and now we're kind of moving into the negative territory. Okay, I'm trying to think if there's some more positive aspects, because lots of governments really want to push people into using public transport. But like I said before, if you don't work or live or are on a bus route, then you're out of luck. You've still got to work, still got to walk or look for another option for that last mile or 2 miles. So it's not making it super easy for commuters to get all the way to work. So there's a bit of a barrier there that could be overcome. I think my government especially want people to be using public transport and leaving their car behind. So that seems to be the general idea of pushing it forward. And they have done trials in the UK, which we'll get into at the end. So there is trials, and they're trying to catch up with legislation. They're very far behind the other countries. Okay, so now moving on to the negative, right. So this one here is Paris, and they're saying that they asked people to vote whether they wanted to keep them or ban them, and what the overall view of e-scooters in Paris was. And apparently there's 103,000 people voted, and almost 90% of people said to ban them altogether. So that's a very clear message from Paris. Okay, right, what else we got? Rome. Okay, so they said again about COVID, the popularity of it. Now they're saying that it's been 17 people killed in the last 2 years due to collisions and with other mobile transport, other transport. So that's pretty scary. But we don't know how many people die. I mean, you got to put it in context. We don't know how many people die from cycling accidents or pedestrian accidents in those last 2 years. So we don't know the context per se. It also says people are also they're going to put in new rules in 2023, and this one says about adults with identification will be able to rent. So we're still talking about renting here. They want to reduce the speed from 25 kilometers down to 20 kilometers per hour. The speed limit will be 6 kilometers per hour in a pedestrian area. So it doesn't look like they're specifying road and or pavement, one or the other. It seems like you can use either. All right. American. And then there was a story about an American who dropped his scooter down a load of stairs and allegedly cost a lot of money to get fixed because they went down these ancient stairs. Okay. Right. Japan now. Japan, they've had quite a lot of cases. 39 arrests for electric scooters for people being drunk. Now, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but getting drunk and then wanting to have a go on a scooter sounds like a lot of fun and that you'd enjoy it more. But obviously you're not as responsible and not as good at hand-eye coordination and your reaction times if you're drunk or under the influence of alcohol. But yeah, it does look quite fun and interesting. So Tokyo's had a few issues. Riders will not need to wear a helmet and they'll be able to ride on the sidewalk. Again, they're going to reduce the speed. You can't ride it unless you're over the age of 16. Yeah, basically that's all it says then, really. And about accidents. Okay. So that's Japan. All right, then what have we got here now? This one is the increased amount of e-scooters. It's just prefacing it at the beginning. Increased electric e-scooters lead to more injuries and deaths. So this one's American, and they're talking about how many people have been injured in America using it in the last couple of years. It says that they're in over 100 cities worldwide, and they're cheap and convenient. So again, they're talking about rental e-scooters. All right, we've got to keep in context that America is a very big place. And again, they say there's not a lot of data on it, but there's been 11 deaths, they said, since 2018 from electric scooters. Austin, Texas official, 192 scooter-related injuries in 3 months, and they don't think they're ready for it. And they're saying that there's fines in Paris for $150 for people who ride on the pavement, or they call it sidewalk. Okay, so they're not happy with it. But riders took 38.5 million trips on rentable scooters. Wow. So that's in the US alone. 38 million trips on these scooters. So there's obviously a demand for them. There's obviously more than just intrigue and curiosity. Okay, and then so that's those articles. And then finally we have the government. The UK government, they've released some findings from their trials. It is a very long document, so obviously I can't read it all. But there are a couple of things, key things that they discussed that politicians should look at before making some regulations and whether to decide to keep them or not. Because the UK has a big trials in many cities, and as far as I know, yeah, it's still illegal to ride your own personal scooter anywhere except for private land with the landowner's permission. So that narrows it down a lot. Basically, you can't ride one unless you're renting it. Apparently, I don't know, but apparently one of the others that I read said that you have insurance if you're paying for it. The company pays for the insurance, hence why the cost. On average, I think it was something like 25 pence per minute. Okay, so some of the themes they say in this document: public attitudes to the use of e-scooters in the UK. So what they're saying here, so they say toy association. I think a lot of these have been under some kind of illusion that if they say it's a toy, they can sell it, as opposed to motorized transport. It's considered a toy. But yet then I don't know why mobility scooters for the elderly and infirm, they're not considered a toy. And I don't know what, I think there's no legislation around those. Because here in the UK, there's quite a lot. There's a plethora of scooters with mostly obese and overweight people in them. And then occasionally you'll see an elderly person in them. But often, well, not often, occasionally you'll see them being ridden by the infirm, who are still a bit younger than the elderly, at a good speed. And you're thinking, wow, if that hurt my ankles. And there's even been cases of people being given Hasbos, which is like a warning by the police, where you have to wear a bracelet around your ankle, a permanent bracelet around your ankle, where you're not going to prison, but you're definitely in trouble, and you have to wear this bracelet so the police can track you. So they call that a Hasbo. Many of our young criminals and young reprobates and teenagers, instead of going to prison, get given this option instead. And then they're normally confined to be in their home by a set time at night and in the morning. That works quite well as far as I'm aware from what I've heard, and they're not allowed to take this tag off. So get given a Hasbo or a tag. Okay, right, we digress. So a toy. The government is saying that as it's labelled a toy, that doesn't give you a lot of confidence that it's built for purpose. All right, okay. Improved accessibility. So they're also saying that they don't think that they're really stable and solid, built for their main roads. And there's a bit of a stigma against it, whether it's for mobility or whether it should be used and taken seriously as a piece of last mile urban transport. Okay, improved accessibility. Then there's safety concerns. They're talking about like speed and about people's confidence on them, and whether they should be used with training and things like this. Okay. Right, that's about that. Then they talk about age restrictions, suitable infrastructure. So in regards to infrastructure, I think they're kind of implying about where they should be parked. The fact that if you bump into one, they all fall over like dominoes. Because one of the other articles actually mentioned about it's very bad for blind people, and the blind people are calling for action, for something to be done, because it's very, very easy to trip over these things, even if you're normal sighted. So e-scooters fall over, but so far in the UK, I've generally seen them mostly dumped is a term, but left in like a box, sprayed on the floor, just a couple of lines, like a parking space for scooters. And often again, they've fallen over because there's a little tiny kickstand. But I never hired one in the UK, and as far as I'm aware, you have to take a photo of it now to prove you've returned it to a suitable spot, you know, within these markings on the pavement. And there are various parkings dotted around the city, so you know where to get one, and people know where to come and pick them up. But unfortunately, I don't know whether it's just the UK, but unfortunately we have some people that are less scrupulous and have different ethics, and end up using them and throwing them in the river, or using them and, you know, throwing them down some stairs, or just trying to trash them and break them. Also, people will steal them and take out any GPS tracking and things like this. But from what I can tell, they are a very cheap commodity for these commuter companies, in that they only expect them to last a year or two to get their money's worth out of them for rental. And then the batteries are kind of worn out, and they just throw them away after a few years. That's another point. Anyways, right, we digress. Let's get back to this Let's get back to this document. Infrastructure. Yeah, so making sure they're charged up, making sure there's some kind of registration scheme so they can be reported, and something else in place, like I said, somewhere else to park, and whether or not people need to be wearing helmets and things like this. Some kind of guidelines, at the very least, guidelines. Okay, and an improved scooter design. The poor visibility of e-scooters. So a lot of the e-scooters that people buy themselves are black. And so in the dark, that makes it difficult to see. So whether or not they have to have lights and reflectors on. Some of the rental ones I've seen are high visibility colors. Okay. It said experienced facilities and applicators. And then it said about the community getting used to them being around. So the government here is talking about the possibilities of future urban transport, because they know they want to get people to be more green and environmentally conscientious, and they still want them to use public transport and not get back into the car, basically. Okay, so that's kind of both sides of the argument. There's some good positive things, and there's quite a few negative things, and then there's the UK government up in the air trying to make their mind up. I still can't remember. I think the UK government said you have to ride it on the road, not on the like a bicycle, not on the pavement where they're elderly, infirm, and young people. So right. So there we go. That's kind of both sides. Okay. So now my input, my 2 pennies worth, my thoughts. So I was going to say there's kind of 2 parts to this. One is that there's a lot of similarities between a scooter and a bicycle in regards to the speed it goes, the fact that it can brake quite quickly, you know, the brakes to stop quite quickly, the fact you're darting around on the road is very similar to a bicycle. So in my eyes, I think maybe if it's deemed the same as a bicycle, and then it should be on the road, not the pavement, would help segregate. It would also make people more safety conscious and aware of not just cyclists, but also scooter riders on the road. And maybe they should abide by the same laws and regulations of the traffic system, you know, traffic lights, pedestrian crossings, etc., things like that. So there's that part of it. Then the other part is, from my own experience, when I lived in Spain, I owned one of these e-scooters. And 90% of the time it was faster than the bus. My wife would get the bus, I would use the e-scooter, because I didn't have to wait around in the rain. Not that it rained a lot in Spain. I didn't have to wait around for the next bus. Although to be fair, in that city they were quite frequent. So my wife didn't have to wait around too long. But I just bought it for fun and flexibility. I was able to take it into the school where I was working, and I was able to take it into the apartment. I changed tires on it and punctures and things like this. So I was kind of well aware of it and had fun with it. And once my wife and I went on it 2 together. So it is strong enough for 2. It is quite well built. It was Chinese. It was a Xiaomi. It was fairly strong. It had a light on the front. It had a brake. It also had a physical brake where you could stand on the back to slow it down as well, should the front brakes not work. It also had an e-brake, so when you let off the throttle, it would slow the scooter down as well, or stop it altogether. And it was really, really fun. A little bit nippy. Yeah, it was restricted to like 15 kilometers an hour or 20, whatever it was. It was the legal amount for Spain. And I did get stopped and fined once because my Spanish isn't very good. And unfortunately, I was riding it down a road that was over 30 miles an hour. Over 30 miles an hour. I was unaware of this. I didn't know the rules and regulations of Spanish roads and the e-scooters. And yes, it's my responsibility. I hold my hands up. It's my responsibility. So that's something you need to bear in mind. So I got it impounded. I had to go to the police station. I had to pay the money. Bearing in mind my Spanish is very, very minimal. You know, basically nothing. And then go over to the impound yard and get that back and then pay some more money. So it was a real rigmarole. So it's not a thing I'd want to go through again. So bear in mind, if you go to a new city and you rent a scooter, make sure you know the rules first. So I really like the e-scooters. I think, yes, they are part of urban transport that can help with the last mile, especially if you've finished work and things like that. So I really like them. That's where my bias is. Where I see there's an issue is that young people are notoriously curious and they want to have fun, and it's very difficult to police and to regulate if the young people are under a certain age. You can't make them pay a fine, especially in the UK. You can't make somebody pay a fine, really. Well, in the UK, you don't have to carry identification. You don't have to carry it at all. It's recommended if you're in your car to have your driving license, but it's not legal, a legal requirement. So in this country, when you're a young person, maybe they should make it law that that if you're going to ride a scooter, that you have identification on you. And we don't have to, by law, wear a cycle helmet either in this country. But and my ideas of a cycle helmet are again very different, because if you go to Amsterdam or even Cambodia, Amsterdam, when we spent time there, nobody wears a helmet. Not everywhere is the car and the bicycle segregated, but the car driver is much more educated and understanding the vulnerabilities and knowing the priority of the road is to the pedestrian and the cyclist. So maybe in the future, car drivers will get squeezed down a little bit. More people will be pushed onto e-scooters and pedestrian walking and bicycles, and that will slowly educate the drivers to slow down and be more giving, because the e-scooter and bicycle does share a lot of shared spaces, like in some parks and some pedestrianised zones. You have signage to say that it's a shared space, especially along by the beaches in the UK where we have a promenade. Often there's shared spaces. Yes, you get kids running around, you get dogs running around, and occasionally you get a young person on a bicycle going too fast. But it's a shared space, and people accept that, and they're more forgiving and a little bit more educated to be gentle and slow. So that's kind of the education in the environment that would be good if we had that on the road. But at the moment, people feel like the road is a racetrack. So again, that's different. And again, I hold my hands up. I'm a car driver. I've got a car license, but maybe this makes me a little bit wiser. I've got a car license, a motorcycle license, a bus license, and a lorry license. So I've done lots of road safety awareness. I've done lots of hazard perception is one of the laws we have here. Not laws, one of the tests we have here, and theory tests as well as practical tests. So you have to do 4 or 5 tests depending on what you're going through. So a full motorcycle license, full car license, full coach license, and a large lorry license, but not the big one, the Arctics. So I've done lots of tests and exams for driving, and I've ridden bicycles and scooters. So I think I've used the roads a lot, and I understand it's much more about education, educating everybody to be more safe, slower, thoughtful, and forgiving to all road users, because you can't stop a child on a pavement from moving around, or a dog. You know, some of these things just happen. Okay, so my conclusion overall is that mobility, these scooters are here to stay. They are part of urban transport, and I think that's what the government want. And maybe the same in other cities, that will eventually happen. Even if some are a bit hesitant to start with, I think that will happen. So I think they're here to stay. I think that it would be good if people were educated and more respectful, like we have in Amsterdam. And I also think that, like I said, people should be forgiving. I also think that there shouldn't be too much legislation. I think it's a difficult ground to say no, teenagers can't use it, or because they'll just do their own thing anyway. They'll still carry on anyway. If you're able to put some, I don't know, registration on the back of it or something like that, it might be a little bit easier to police. Maybe it's going to be one of those areas that you can't police. I don't know. So like I say, you have to have the app. Maybe youngsters can only rent them, whereas adults can buy them and have their own. Maybe that's the way to go forward. Who will see? Well, we will see. We will see in the future. All right, okay, so that's my conclusion. It's here to stay. It is better for the environment. It is getting people out of the car and maybe one step closer to walking and getting exercise. And we have to be more forgiving and more flexible of shared spaces. So that's my 2 cents worth. That's my thought, my ideas. If you have e-scooters in your city, if you've had experience with e-scooters, or if you think they're a real menace and dangerous, let me know in the comments below. Tell me what you think. I'm interested to hear. Let's have a conversation. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll say thank you very much. Remember, always have fun learning English. Try and make some fun out of it, whether it's a joke or a conversation. Enjoy English, otherwise you won't keep going with it. So have fun, enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care for now, and bye-bye.